The African National Congress's briefing the media on discussion forum will be focused on social transformation discussion documents towards the National Policy Conference. Let's cut live to the press conference right away.
We concluded that we're now entering a second phase of our transition. Having come from a vicious racial past with systemic exclusion, it has been a very difficult period for us in the social transformation sector. And we remained with pockets of areas that we've not been able to address, and more of those later. It is those pockets that have been very resistant to change that we will be taking through to the policy conference. We realize now that what we have is a cohabitation of society where poverty, inequality, patriarchy are still the dominant features of our country. A good starting point would therefore be the vision statement of the National Development Plan, which we adopted. The NDP's vision statement envisions a South Africa in 2030 where we as South Africans, as a collective, working together, create a society where we have created a home where everybody feels free yet bonded to each other, where everybody embraces their full potential, where we are proud to be a community that cares. The NDP statement also envisages a society where in 2030 we will have answered the questions about who we are, which is our national identity. It poses the question and then answers it by stating, and I quote, "We are Africans, we're an African country," and also states that, and I quote, "We feel loved, respected, cared for at home, in community, and in public institutions that we have created." That's what we would like everybody to feel. African, as opposed to pockets of the racial past that we've carried with us. We'll come back to this issue later. From a social transformation perspective, I'm very bold to declare that what we mean when we talk about radical transformation. It means a fundamental shift to take us from where we started off as a democracy in 1994 to what we envisaged in the Freedom Charter. A fundamental mind shift to ensure that all those things that we put together in the Freedom Charter can be realized. The period we've been living through can best be described as a peaceful and, as I've indicated, a consensual cohabitation. We've carried part of the past with us in this period. We've got to move away from that. This is why we're now calling for a mind shift to allow us to deal effectively with those very strong remnants of the past, like racism, and a mind shift that allows us to deal with all forms of discrimination decisively, a mind shift that allows us to deal with extreme inequalities effectively, a mind shift that forms the center of all movements going forward, a mind shift that is intolerant of patriarchy, a fundamental shift that ensures that children enjoy the full protection of all in the country, and especially their homes. It might not have been possible for us to deal decisively with all of these matters because while we were providing a safety net for the poorest of the poor, we're to navigate our way to get to the state the Freedom Charter has outlined for us. But even more importantly, we need a fundamental shift that indicates that while citizens' rights are protected in the Constitution, every citizen understands that they have a responsibility to ensure that those rights are actually carried through. And this is something that we don't find in the Constitution. We find it, however, in the Freedom Charter, and we would like to emphasize it in the ANC, that citizens have a responsibility. It is not just rights that are given to them, it is also responsibility towards each other, towards the state, and towards those institutions that are put in place to have a functional society. We therefore would like to ensure that everybody participates in allowing the minister to sit down. We participate responsibly to let her settle down. Good morning, Minister. I did apologize on your behalf. This is a very easily forgotten and substantive element in negotiating our way through the past period, that of responsibility. Citizens must understand they have a responsibility, and we need to continuously educate them, because only in an ideal space would we be able to ensure that everybody is part of this transformation. For today's discussion with yourselves, we would like to bring out a few issues that we previously might not have been able to deal with, because the environment that was created after 1994, as I indicated, was a consensual cohabitation. Now we're moving into a certain mind shift. And these are the areas that we would like to discuss with you as we take them through our society, as we take them to the conference. We would like to deal and understand the issue of racism and how we can rid society of the issue of racism. We have attempted as a transformation committee to deal with the issue of racism, but it was felt that it was perhaps too premature for people to absorb what we wanted to put across, and in fact we withstood the risk of reversing all the gains. We feel now we've reached a point where we can deal with the issue of racism as a society, as a committee, and see how we can ensure that we can eliminate all of these stubborn stains in our society. We would like to deal with the issue of creation of a national identity, that we are African, that all of us belong to South Africa. Hopefully by the end of 2030, we will no longer have somebody serving us in a restaurant saying two blacks sitting somewhere. We are all Africans, we are all South Africans. Most countries that have had a past like ours deal with themselves in their national identity. You will not have a white Motswana or a black Motswana. We are hoping that by 2030 we will all be South Africans, identifiable in that way. The reason why we still remain in some of our institutions with black, white, Indian attached to our status is because we wanted to make sure as a government that we have kept to the program of transformation, that we have ensured that we can affirm people who were previously disadvantaged. But it is time now to rethink this and actually find a way of identifying ourselves, purely as I'm a South African. The issue of a national consensus is one of the issues that we would like to discuss. The feeling of belonging together, black and white, and ensuring that we can rid ourselves of those stubborn elements of tribalism that still exist, wherever we may find them. And any feeling that deliberately excludes the next person, these are issues that we need to find a national consensus about and make sure that we can move forward as a society completely transformed. We want to deal with the issue of the protection of the child. We'll come back to this issue later. It's a very important one. We would like to make sure that we can protect women, especially vulnerable women, abused women, etc. We would like to make sure that we can have a reversal of apartheid spatial patterns that continue to reinforce exclusion. We would like to make sure that sport and an active mind are central to our transforming our society. We would like an active, participatory, and fit society to take us to 2030. That covers most of what we are about. But each one of these will be unpacked as we go along, and we have our support staff here who will be able to answer most of the questions that might come out of here. We're discussing this. We're discussing what we're discussing now as we prepare for the policy conference, because we would like to make sure that we build out of that a society where we are proud as South Africans that we care, a society we need to build with more equal, a feeling of more equality, guided by the principles of solidarity. And I'm proud to say that this commission here has led government policy decisions on most of these matters. Chapter 11, for instance, of the NDP document on social protection was largely informed by discussion held by this particular committee and the social comprehensive security framework as well. The current policy document expresses the need to speed up the implementation of the social protection flaw outlined in the NDP and Government Outcomes 13. This will require better coordination and implementation by the state. I'll talk more about this later, or allow the DG to talk, the acting DG to talk more about this later. Going back to the idea of creating a society we fought for, which in the NDP is described as a home where everybody feels free and yet bonded to each other, we cannot create the society where we all feel free unless we eliminate violence against women, violence against children, violence against the most vulnerable. These are issues that confront us as a social transformation committee on a regular basis. These are the screaming headlines we find in newspapers on a regular basis, 23 years into a democratic state. To create this society wherein we all feel free, we must eliminate this violence. It is at the core of what the minister...
Well, that was the ANC NEC member of parliament there, Melindwe Sisulu, where the African National Congress is actually addressing and briefing the media on the discussion forum. Melindwe Sisulu is stating that we need a fundamental state where the citizens' rights should be protected at all costs. And the main important thing there that Melindwe Sisulu was saying that we should try and fight against racism in South Africa. Melindwe said that we are all Africans and we are all South Africans. And he also touched on the very important issues there about protecting the children and, of course, women against violence and abuse.